But I'm hoping like the GameStop thing and like it will progress to a point where you're talking to an average person. They're like, oh, can you explain Bitcoin to me? You'll be like, it's real money that is yours. And they're like, whoa, money that's actually mine? Who help me? Like, that's the mental leap people need to make. The norm should be, my money can be taken from me at any time.
She is 100% right. Your money is not yours if it's in a bank account or on a brokerage account. They can restrict whatever they want. That being said, hello and welcome to the Tucson Bitcoin podcast. Today I have on Julia Tourianski from Brave the World, and she is also one of the co-authors of Thank God for Bitcoin. And yeah, I mean, in this conversation, we just dove into what Bitcoin is, Austrian economics, and self-sovereignty, and like how Bitcoin helps you to be a self-sovereign person. And we had a lot of critique of the state. You know, I think it's pretty fair right now to be a little bit uneasy with all the things that they're doing, and I think it's fair to always be uneasy with what things are doing, because when there is a strong entity that just has all power and eliminates any ability to push back, you know, that is the grounds for tyranny. And this is something that people really need to understand, you know, is that their best interest is not being represented, and that they need to be the ones that represent their own best interest by doing things like owning Bitcoin so that they can be secure and have their wealth preserved. And it's so much more than inflation. You know, we talk a lot about inflation on the podcast, but, you know, at this point, it's about preventing your money from being seized and stolen. Well, anyways, hope you enjoy this conversation. And we're recording. Good to have you on, Julia.
Hello.
So, been doing some research on you. It sounds like you have a pretty compelling story. What got you into Bitcoin starting out?
Yeah, so I was involved in Austrian economics in the city nearby where I lived. We'd have meetups, and I just was into that scene. And when Bitcoin came along, I kind of already knew about it, but I didn't quite get it yet. And then once I started getting into Austrian economics, I was like, oh, wow, this is why it's beneficial and valuable. And then after that, I met some people that were more politically involved in Bitcoin, as well as technically. So those kind of worlds created a cohesive picture of why Bitcoin is exactly what we need. And yeah, that was a while ago now.
Awesome. What led you to Austrian economics? It's kind of a niche um, community for sure.
Well, I had a friend, I was kind of like a libertarian in high school, and I had a buddy that knew my political leanings. He's like, oh, I should bring you to this Mises meetup. You'd like that. So that kind of opened the more of the economical side of like libertarian thinking. So yeah, that's kind of how I got involved. And I think it just attracted me to it, maybe because of my history, like coming from a horrendous Soviet state, where the opposite way of doing economics obviously didn't work out. So that probably has to do like with some of my conditioning and like propensity towards the attraction.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've had both Jan Pritzker and Katie the Russian on the podcast, and they both described very similar experiences with like seeing the contrast of um, you know, like extreme central planning and capitalism. Like Jan described coming to the U.S. and seeing food in grocery stores and just being amazed.
My dad says the same thing. Like the first time he went grocery shopping in Canada, he just stood in front of the yogurt aisle and he was like, why is there so many different types of yogurt? And he was just like, you know, what's the term when you go to a museum and you're so overwhelmed by the art? It's like a German term. You're like in a state of shock and whelm.
Yeah, my mom described it as a culture shock, and it's definitely like something people experience going back and forth between different countries. It's pretty wild how that plays out. Like my brother, he had spent like 6 months in Bolivia and had to evacuate because of all the almost civil war stuff that almost happened down there. And he came back to the US and was so overwhelmed and, you know, had a lot of anxiety. It's pretty interesting to see that
Yeah.
for sure. Um, so yeah. So if you're going to sum up Austrian economics, how would you describe it?
Well, I think the main thing, they frame money and like the exchange of money as human behavior. So they acknowledge that it's at the end of the day human behavior, and they kind of reject like any kind of stimulation of economy or centralization of economy or planning of it. And I guess like some of the more controversial stances they would take is when there's a recession, like you do nothing instead of trying to stimulate and reboot the economy. And they point out to sometimes in history that aren't really notable because that's exactly what happened. Like no one did anything, so it just self-corrected. So yeah, those are kind of like the big things. Basically, you can look at like Keynesian economics, and anything you read about that, it would be like the inverse.
Yeah, my first introduction to Austrian economics was reading Saifedean's book, The Bitcoin Standard, and it kind of blew me away because it's literally the exact
Oh yeah, and
opposite
like
of
they're anti-fiat money, of course. So yeah, that's
yeah.
like so normal to me. I forgot to mention the main thing because it's just the way I think.
It
But to most people, that's like, what's fiat money? Um, so yeah,
yeah
somebody
it,
with no life standard to value.
mhm. Yeah, I think Austrian economics it's really fascinating because most people don't even know that it's a thing. Like, people will um, hear about like watered down versions of Friedrich Hayek and Ludwig von Mises and other famous Austrian economic or economists in school, but it's kind of framed in the sense of like central planning is still like uh, extremely important in economies. And so, when people are presented with an Austrian idea, um, it's pretty foreign, is what I've found. The idea of like, so like the idea of like doing nothing in a recession, in the frame, people are looking at like 2008 as kind of the major reference point, or like what happened in the Great Depression. And, they think that um, had the government not done anything, it would have just been a complete disaster. Um, so
Yeah, if people want to look it up, there's like many articles written on the depression or like the recession that never happened, the depression that never happened, and they contrasted to the Great Depression and why this one didn't occur. And I mean, to some degree, it's really difficult to like retroactively prove things, but they do take like specific things that were similar and that should have led to a like the depression style economic downturn, and it just like didn't to that extent because they didn't intervene as much as they usually do. So, and I mean, that's kind of a freedom loving libertarian mindset anyways, like whether it's the economy or like a virus, most of those people would generally tend to leave things alone instead of rushing to the government to make policies to help.
yeah, it's really I think important for people to break down what they believe kind of philosophically about the world, to understand their political leanings. And I think the average person doesn't really take the time to go and look at first principles of like, why do I believe what I believe, and what is this assumption built off of? Um, And so it's really interesting to have conversations with people about Bitcoin in particular, because it's the complete opposite of just about everything in our society. Um, yeah, super interesting. Um, so yeah, you're one of the authors of Thank God for Bitcoin. How did you get involved with writing that book?
Basically, I met Jimmy at a conference, and we ended up talking about God, and we were both Christians, and we kept in touch after that. And he lives in the same city as me, so he hosts like meetups and stuff, so we like built up a rapport. And then he was doing a Bible Bitcoin book club during COVID and invited me. I'm like, oh, that sounds fun. So I joined that up, and we read a couple kind of Austrian economics leaning books, and a lot of them were older and kind of ended up talking about gold again, and how we need to reform the government, blah, 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 and just solutions that just haven't historically worked very well. And that was kind of frustrating and like deflating. So then I get this email and it's like, oh, we decided to write a book to like correct uh, this gap in thinking. And I'm like, oh, okay, go ahead, go and write it. I didn't even respond to the email because like I didn't think I'd have time. But they emailed me again. They're like, no, you should like really be part of this. This is gonna be great. I'm like, all right, well, all right, let's do it. And I happen to have been going to my parents' house for the summer, so that allowed me to have more time than I could have, I would not have been able to contribute to the book if I didn't have my parents babysitting my kids some of those days. So that helped a lot. So we wrote a lot of it during the summer. And then actually the editing process was actually longer, or equal to, because writing the book was really easy. Like we all are pretty cohesive in what we were trying to deliver in the product. And I feel like it just spilled out of us. But then editing it and having like finding that one voice, and then kind of conforming on the details was the more difficult and the more kind of time strenuous endeavor. So yeah, thanks to my husband, because at that point I wasn't with my parents anymore, so he had to
Mhm.
babysit a lot. Yeah, so that's it. That's what we did.
Yeah, I so for anybody listening that doesn't know, there's 8 authors in the book, and so it's a lot of coordinating and different ideas. And from what I understand, you kind of passed around each chapter to each person to look it over, and it just it sounds like quite a
Yeah,
process.
so we each wrote a chapter roughly. Like some people, yeah, it was really interesting. Some people like kept it really concise. Some people like wrote 10 pages, and like, we had to either we actually had to cut so much, and cutting is hard because someone put the effort into it. And then the adding to it, at some parts was difficult too, because you have to do the research and that's time consuming. But it ended up being that like you read the book and like you see like little bits of you, and then it's completed by little bits of like Gabe or like Jimmy or whoever, and like it was really fun because it really did blend together well. um and I actually really enjoy like going to a page and going like, okay, I think this was introduced by this person, but then like we had to make it a little less aggressive, and then here was a little too soft, and then we had to bring it back up to being a little more edgy. So I loved the process. I thought it was really cool, but you have to have a group of people that are very reasonable and have a vision that's overall united, or else you're just going to argue the whole time. And like we somehow pulled it off. We were like all very reasonable.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I found striking as I was reading the book was I couldn't really figure out who wrote what. It read pretty smoothly. And
Yeah.
I thought I would be like, okay, this is Breed Love, this is Jimmy Song, this is, whoever. And
I did sneak like some goose stuff. So my friend, like, he screenshot, he's like, okay, this is this is totally proof that you contributed to the book because I put like something in about geese.
yeah.
But other than that, it's like it's hard to pinpoint who did what. Um, yeah. And it was really fun. I loved it. I really enjoyed like a lot of the work also was someone would put a lot of information out and then it's like you have to make it more readable and like structure it. That's actually one of my biggest strengths. So that was a really fun point of the process for me. It's like taking someone's awesome information and putting it in a way that's a lot more readable. So yeah, I don't know. I just have really positive things to say about the process. This is Jimmy's second time doing it. He's gonna do another book. Books. It's called a book sprint when you write a book really fast all together.
Hmm.
So yeah, maybe my husband might be involved on that project. So that would be cool for him.
That's awesome. Yeah, yeah. The other book I know he did like that was the little Bitcoin book, and
Mm.
I have yet to
Yeah, and
read
they were
that
like
one.
actually locked in the room together. So that would have been more fun. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to actually, like, that was the one positive thing about COVID. Like we had to do it online. And that's the only way I could have done it because I can't like abandon my baby for a week to write a book.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's so impressive and would have been unthinkable, a couple decades ago, is for a bunch of people to collaborate like that all over the country and world. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's a really, really cool aspect of that. So I was listening to Swan Signal the other day with and Brecky, American Hodl, Gigi, a few people were on there talking about how Bitcoin to some people fills a God-sized hole in their lives and kind of brings a sense of purpose and meaning to their life. And it just got me thinking about like, some of the parallels, with this book too, some of the parallels between religion and Bitcoin. Have you seen that? And what do you think about that?
Well, there's a danger to that. I understand where that comes from because like Bitcoin fits into a moral framework that we inherit from Christianity. And a lot of people who are not Christian don't get that they're still kind of Christian, even if they say they're not. If you think, okay, if you think like you're not touched by Christian ethics, having been grown up in the West, like you're just wrong. So, and usually people who like Bitcoin, like with capital B, they like the system of it. They like the sovereignty and keeping your money, all that stuff. It's non-violent, blah, 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 the appropriated terms by the ANCAPs and the libertarians for like what is actually Christian ethics, all that. It's just, yes, there's a hole and you're gonna choose things that fit your worldview. And it's just not quite far enough. Like I wish people would admit that they need to like just like admit that they fit into a moral framework that they're not making up or like taking from people. Like this is a Christian moral framework. So yeah, and the problem with like there's a lot of people who criticize Bitcoin for like being a cult or a religion, and it's very hyperbolic and extreme and like silly. Like I really don't like those articles, but like I also know people in the community that kind of act that way. And you can do that with anything, not just Bitcoin. Bitcoin's probably the lesser evil to do that with. But I think people who are drawn to Bitcoin are moral people with dignity who want the best for everyone, who also don't want to be acted upon violently, who don't want to see other people acted upon violently, and who want to be sovereign. And they just don't really understand where those feels come from.
Yeah, I think that's great. And Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think like one of the things that's powerful about Bitcoin and where we're at right now is it is a very new emerging technology that has the power to change people's lives. And so people can find and derive a sense of meaning and purpose from that. Um, and I think that's kind of what they were talking about in the interview. So hopefully I didn't misrepresent what they were saying.
Oh,
But yeah,
yeah. No,
yeah.
I've talked to American Hodl about this a little bit, and I know what he means by that, and I think he has a very well-rounded opinion about it. And I think like the danger I want to kind of point out with people making Bitcoin like the center of their existence, or one of the only things that they find purpose in, is there have been characters in our space who were like really revered and like that made Bitcoin their, crusade. And then when they weren't on their pedestal anymore, when like there was a big turnover in like 2019, yeah, 2018, of where like the core devs became the emphasis of the community, and a lot of like the evangelizing characters of Bitcoin like couldn't take the hit. Like their ego was really tied to being like the people pushing Bitcoin, and it resulted in alt chains and like altcoins and splits and all that stuff. So that's just one example. Like you can't, Bitcoin is amazing, but it should buttress your existing life and purpose and worldview. It should not like be that.
Yeah. I mean, I think if like somebody's new and listening to this conversation, they'll probably think like it's wild that you're even having to say that. Just because of how enthusiastic people get about it for sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah. And they should be. It's great to have a passion and to believe in something, but it can't be the thing that you believe in.
yeah.
This not going to end well because it's a human thing at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you said that like Bitcoin appeals to people with a moral framework and foundation.
Generally, I would
Mhm.
say generally, yeah.
So so what would you say is the problem with fiat, and why do people jump to Bitcoin and see that as more of a more moral money?
Okay, well, like fundamentally, fiat is a money that is backed by government. So uh, generally, it's like purely backed by the belief that the government will keep the money valuable, or the Fed, or it's all, to me, like these terms are very interconnected, right? Like what is the Fed without the government, and vice versa. So it's money that doesn't have value, like does it's you can't it's not attached to anything. So when we had the gold standard, fiat, wasn't fiat because it had something backing it. Right now, we don't even have that. The difference is the biggest difference between Bitcoin and fiat money, which is like in every country, is Bitcoin is deflationary. Fiat money by nature like cannot be deflationary. It's always inflationary because it's always printed, which dilutes the supply, so it inflates it. But when you have like an asset that is also money, and it's scarce, like Bitcoin, it's going to be deflationary. And I mean, the typical ones are silver and gold, but you can argue that those can be inflated now, etc. So yeah, those are the biggest differences. And in terms of morality, like inflation is theft, inflation is immoral. You're under the thumb of an entity. They can just inflate your money at a whim. So, and whenever I meet boomers now, I talk to boomers, I've talked to my neighbor, like, do you have savings in USD? Well, yes, all my savings are in USD. I have 200K. I'm like, please don't keep those savings in fiat money because they will get devalued. And they're like, they're like normies by most standard, and they agree with me. They know this, but then like, well, I don't know what to get. I'm like, at least get gold. Like at least like that's still better still will be better. Like bury it in your backyard, like at least like do something, or good luck buying it though right now. Like it's really hard to purchase those assets right now. But I'm just telling everyone, like, please do not hold this valueless money. They just, especially Canadians, they printed the most money out of any Western country for COVID. Like the Canadian economy is going to tank. It's going to be the first one to tank. And what are you going to have? What you work your whole life, like all these boomers, this is my like, this is my prediction. Okay, I'm going to veer off here. All these Canadian boomers who like are wearing their masks and staying inside and are like, thank you for saving us. In 10 years, when they're like 70 and too old to riot, all of their savings will be halved or go to zero. Not even 10 years. 10 years is like, I'm being very humble here. I'm thinking in 2 years, their savings are going to be literally just taken from them via inflation, or via like, we're going to take this because we have no money now. Thank you, boomer. They're not going to, their kids aren't going to inherit anything. And they're going to be really mad. And they're going to be like, what happened? It's like, remember COVID? And like all that money that was printed so that your lazy son and daughter like won't riot so they can get their $2,000 every month to not go to work at their bar. That's what happened. Like, bye. So this is very bad. And I like boomers. I think they worked really hard. They had better circumstances, but they still gave their like time and sweat for this money that they saved up that they won't get now. It will be gone.
Yeah, I think a pretty fair assessment if we continue on at the rate that we're going, which we almost definitely will. But Julia, that's where the government comes in. They're going to give everybody a UBI check, and then you won't need to worry about retirement anymore.
They will. So their kids will live on $2,000 a month for the rest of their life, while their boomer parents have to like sell their nice second home and then first home or whatever. Depends how much money they had saved and how many assets they had. So they'll probably just be left with their assets and they won't be able to pay property tax on it or anything. Like it'll be a mess. It'll be really bad. But yeah, what's the New World Forum like slogan or whatever? Like, you will own nothing and you will love it. You will rent everything. You will
Yeah,
rent your wife.
and again, that comes down to philosophy. So I had Alex Gladstein on the podcast, and we talked a lot about, what are civil liberties. Really broke it down. And one of the things that he explained, which was interesting, is these concepts like universal health care, and job guarantees, and et cetera. They came from the Soviet Union in the creation of the United Nations. So that the United States is going and talking about like freedom of the press, freedom of expression, stuff like that. And the Soviet Union with the gulags and all sorts of crazy stuff, and no freedom of expression or press, or really ability to own anything. We're talking about these concepts, and that's how they kind of entered into the conversation on a world global scale.
Well, it's funny too, like, like how people survived in the Soviet Union. Like everyone worked. There was a slogan, you pretend to pay us and we pretend to work. So that's for the reason everything collapsed. And people would just steal. Like it was normal behavior for literally everybody to just steal. Funny because like you would be ratted out a lot of the time in the Soviet Union for minute things, but kind of closer to the end, like you work in an office, everyone just steals shit constantly, all the time. And it was such normal behavior, like that stuff wasn't really, you weren't being really ratted out about that. But like if you at the start, if you like took an extra bag of rice, or like didn't declare it, like your family, gulag time. But by the end of it, because you couldn't survive on what you were being paid, like it was just normal, like everybody stole. And the people who worked, like the closer you worked to the big man, to like big brother, the closer you got up the pyramid to big brother, the more you stole. Like, obviously, it's still like that. It's just under a different system. But so, and it's funny because you look at America and look at some of the major cities where like petty crime is being decriminalized, and like stealing is just like normal now, except like the proletariat are allowed to like steal from like the bad people, which is like small businesses, right? And that's what they did in the Soviet Union. They took farmers who worked the land and fed people, and they killed them and took their land because stealing is okay. So yeah, but it's like this, it's gonna lead to like, it's the same progression. It's gonna lead to first that like stealing is okay in this circumstance, where then everyone is kind of equally poor and everyone just steals from, from the government all the time. That's where it's going to end up. Like everything is going to just get shittier and shittier. Like, and it's really sad because America is a very, people have like amazing work ethic. Like people really look down on theft. Like people, there's a lot of very moral people in the general population, and that's going to change. Like you're going to get a country, walk through San Francisco. Like this really opened my eyes to the human condition and like what entitlement does to you, and what, allow like the if you allow criminality to just fester. Like I used to think, oh yes, most people who are down and under, like homeless people, etc., they're just in a bad place, blah blah blah. And then when you like actually talk to them, or like live really close to them and like walk by them every day, you realize like this is like, no, like this is like their game, like this is what they do, this is their life. And whatever brought them to this stage, they are fully consciously doing the thing that they need to do. I would walk through San Francisco, New York, through these areas, 8 months pregnant, visibly pregnant, and like no difference of body language or tone or anything, panhandling me, asking me for money. Like it doesn't matter if you, and then when I had kids, when I didn't have kids, it's all the same. They treat, you're just an opportunity to extract resources. And I've had moments where I've talked to people that are like dependent or like homeless, etc., and you try to like hear their life story, or like, treat them like a human being, just like talk to them, and it always, hey, can you spare, like it's always immediately about money. And it's like this, it's the sick conditioning, because no one, maybe no one in their life, like they probably came from a bad place, and then society has told them that all that matters is how much money you can extract from other people, so you can, buy your weed and buy your Subway. They have no purpose. No one is rehabilitating them to give them purpose in their life, to not treat human beings as resources. And the government treats them as resources, because giving people welfare is buying votes, basically. It's this, the whole system is rotten. I went off on a crazy tangent. I don't even know what I was talking about, but it's so rotten, and it's rotting way faster, and no one is trying to reform anything in a way that works, like giving people purpose and dignity. So yeah, prepare for the worst, everybody, because this is like not, you cannot change this in one generation now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's I think it's really unfortunate how large of a role politics plays in our society, and I
It's
think
victimizing everyone.
mhm. Yeah, what I see is a lot of people are feeling demoralized and powerless, due to like generations of theft, through inflation and bad government policy, and so it they abdicate their power and influence over to these politicians who are supposed to, fix the situation from them, which is kind of like a failing. Um, it's a system that's set up to fail, and I think like a lot of these issues that we see today, really can be solved, or at least addressed, maybe not solved, because that's too much of a, there's never going to be a perfect society or utopia. But they can be addressed more efficiently and effectively by us. If we take ownership for our community, and really fix these issues. And that's one of the things that I find pretty incredible about Bitcoin is like, you know, when you look at the stark contrast, a lot of people will hear, may hear our comparisons to the Soviet Union and think that, they're kind of hyperbolic and maybe not extreme and may not fit. But what it comes down to is like, if you don't have property and you don't have wealth, then you don't have a voice, and you don't have, really any ability to represent yourself in society. And that's what I see as the danger here is, um, we're being like, without Bitcoin, and without like financial literacy, which like nobody has, to protect yourself from the system. Like, you're just operating at a loss constantly, and you're
Yeah, well, we're not at the stage yet where they're coming for like your land or your bank account like directly. So, and we have so many resources, and like people in the Soviet Union didn't have a fucking option. Okay, they just took like you could run away, I guess. Like some people kind of felt the mood and left ahead of time. That's awesome, good for them. Everyone else was just killed or like sent away. Like you didn't have the option here. It's still America. There's still states that are functioning. There's still cities that are functioning. Like things aren't like you're not a victim until you choose to be. That's still true right now. And if for years and years and years and years, recession after liberal policy, more liberal policy, more liberal policy, and like, well, one day like you're forced, your business has to do one thing, and the next day your kid has to learn this thing at school, and the next day like, oh well, your safety deposit box wasn't open in 5 years, so we took what was in it. Like all of these flags, like, okay, it's shitty stuff, but they're not holding a gun to your head and taking your farmland yet. But like, what's gonna happen is with the economy will take a downturn, like really bad. That's just numbers. It's just numbers. And if you can't foresee that right now, like you're just dumb. And okay, some people are dumb, and those people generally don't have anything anyways. But if you're like a well-to-do, intelligent person and you're like, nah, government great, my money's safe, I don't feel sorry for you because that's your own fault. Okay, you're gonna be broke, and it's gonna be like you're gonna be sad. Like, I can't believe I voted for this guy and I have no money now. Like that's gonna be on you. So, but what bothers me is people that like now are lower middle class, kind of like paycheck to paycheck, like on the poverty line, even all those people in between, they in a city at least, like you don't have upward mobility at all. You just don't, because everything goes to the renters. Like people, that's just how our economy in cities works right now. And the only thing for those people to do is to move somewhere cheaper and try to get a job and try to save and buy land or buy Bitcoin or buy something real, so that when the economy takes a horrible downturn, like you're at least not totally bankrupt. But yeah, you can't, like, not everyone's going to be saved. And I do feel bad for those people that it's really hard to do that. But at the same time, like, my family was not rich or even middle class for like 10 years in Canada. And we worked our butts off and we prepared, and we're getting hit hard right now with the COVID stuff, but we're still holding on. And that's not because of like handouts or like preferential treatment or anything. It's because we come from a country where stuff happened and we remember what happened, and we're always like ready. Like my parents can pick up and leave everything that they've built and move forward. Most people like don't understand what that is, or have never built anything, or like just they live like this. And Yeah, and it's sad, but those people are not going to be taken care of. Like, if there's going to be a recession, you're not going to get your stimulus check. Like, you're effed. Sorry. And I want to tell people that so that they might do something about it while they still can.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And our book
some.
does that, by the way. So
Mhm.
if you guys agree with what I'm saying and you have friends that are like, oh, I'm okay, like, give them the book. It'll help,
Yeah.
especially if they're Christian already.
Yeah, I think a lot of Bitcoiners feel like Noah building an ark, shouting that a flood's coming, and people just kind of laughing
Yeah.
or ignoring them. But yeah, there's this like weird thing that in human psychology where people don't really are unable to grasp or really like contemplate something until they experience it themselves. So like, you look at something like drug addiction or mental health or issues or, stuff like that. People don't um, have really trouble grasping it. And so it is interesting to hear people's different people's perspectives from countries where they've experienced capital controls and um, extreme wealth or just monetary debasement and things like that. Um, and it's unfortunate that we kind of think that way and experience life that way, that we can't just like read that this is a possibility, so let's prepare for it. Um,
Well, the don't trust, verify thing. Like,
mhm.
any good ex-Soviet is like living that life from the start. Like, don't trust, verify. So I like to joke, like, whenever someone brings up like Russians, like, oh, it's like Bitcoin big in Russia. I'm like, dude, go to any Russian bathhouse anywhere in the world, like anywhere in the world. I went to a bunch in America. Go to any one of them at like in like 2013 and mention Bitcoin, and like everyone's head turns like, oh yes, I've heard of it. Like, way, like, Russian people were on it. Don't worry, like, this is so funny because it's not funny, but like, if you, yeah, it's like you said, if you don't experience hardship in your life, like, you just assume your life is going to be great for the forever. But like, all of the ex-Soviet people, the ones that are in the West, like they're like, they have the ear to the ground. They're not just living in the clouds, most of them at least. They were into Bitcoin, like they're into all of this stuff. It's not a coincidence. There's like a huge disproportionate amount of like Russians, little Slavs, Russians, Ukrainians, Polish people like into Bitcoin comparatively to just like Anglo people in America. It's hilarious, but there's a
Yeah.
reason for that.
Yeah. It's there's
We're
definitely a difference.
overrepresented. We're overrepresented. We have Bitcoin privilege.
I haven't heard that yet. I guess I need to really speed up my Russian lessons. Um, Maybe get over there and check it out. Um, but yeah, I mean it's yeah, it's just like funny to see what's happening with Dogecoin this week
Oh
and
man,
like
dude.
I
So I was trying to get my old Doge wallet reinstated, and they like split chain and stuff, so I couldn't do it. So I sent it to my buddy who's like old school Bitcoiner, like he's one of the top like coders in the world, I would say. So I'm like, if this guy can't do it, it's gone. So I sent him my wallet, and he's like looking at it, and he ended up having to run his own node because their network was so broken, and they were like getting DDoSed and stuff. And then he ended up having the biggest like node, and he goes into their IRC and he's like, hey, can you guys like pay me or I'll take this node down? They're like, we'll give you a Dogecoin. It's like, fuck you guys. It's just such a shit show. So I don't know. And are people having trouble like even taking their, like, even syncing with the network, or
I didn't
are
even
you following that at
I
all?
I I don't pay attention to altcoins a whole
Yeah.
lot.
No, it's such
It's
puke. I just like, it was like on my donation page for a bit, so I had like a little bit, but I thought that was so funny. Like, no one is maintaining this stupid coin.
typically when I meet an altcoiner, I'll just assume that they have no interest in running a node and that their main interest is in making money or quick, easy money. Um,
Yeah, And if no one runs nodes, you can't sell your quick bucks. So good luck. Like, it's so broken.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. I mean, I think like what the majority of people are doing with something like Doge is they're buying it on a platform like eToro, or I don't even know if they support them, but like
Yeah.
Robinhood, where you don't actually they don't,
Yeah.
there's not like real custody of it. You can't like withdraw it. It's just like a paper version.
Yeah.
But
That's exactly what it is.
yeah, I mean, I think like looking at it for everybody has a different reason for Bitcoin. You know, some people it's a necessity, some people it's just like, you know, peace of mind, some people it's like for like really trying to reshape the monetary system, and others it's just like a store of value or a way to make money. It's really interesting to see how people's life circumstances really impact their decisions, and what draws them to something like Bitcoin, or, you know, in this case, Dogecoin. So, I mean, it's,
Nothing draws you to Dogecoin.
yeah, I mean, I,
Boring.
if I knew I could make a lot of money on it, I probably still wouldn't be interested in it, because it just seems like a waste of time to me.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, it's, I don't know. So yeah, what's your take on this whole GameStop thing, and what's happened with Robinhood over this past week?
I think it's funny. I think it's funny that Yellen was on the phone all week, like trying to fucking clean up the, Reddit puke, basically. Like, how funny is that? This is like people in the White House are like sitting around trying to control a bunch of idiots online. I mean, it's so like we live in a meme. Like the economy is a meme, and everybody knows it. GameStop like pulled the mask down. Everything is just a meme. It's hilarious. Money isn't real. Everyone knows that now. Like, at least on a meta level, and like on a subconscious level, like people feel it. Like people like, wait, what happened? How can this happen? How can some 4chan Reddit? How can people do that? It's so funny. It's so funny. And then like all the people jumping in and trying to make money, and then like Robinhood shutting them down. They're like, oh no, I can't make a quick money. I can't make my quick money. How is this possible? They're not allowed to shut me down. I'm like, yeah, they are. They're a centralized platform. They can do whatever they want. And I'm pretty sure in some of their policies, like if like trades are acting irrational, like they're allowed to just like stop it. They are. So I don't know to what degree, but whether they're allowed to or not doesn't matter. Like, they did, and they can, and they will. So I hope they get sued. Like, I hope that I think so. I think they are gonna have lawsuits over it, because they sold people's like they closed trades out on people's behalf. So it just depends on what you like sign when you like do the app, download the app and stuff. But that's going to be hilarious. I love it. More, please. I really like it.
Yeah, it is really funny to think that this is what Janet Yellen has to deal with in her first week of office, having to
What
secret.
is 4chan? Like, oh my God. Like, imagine her, like, I bet she's like Googling all these forums and stuff. And oh my God, it's so funny. So funny. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the idea of having the SEC scrolling through uh, Wall Street bets is one of the funniest concepts I've ever thought of or
Yeah.
heard of.
And like, also, I hope like anyone that looked into this, like, you look and you see like all of these firms and all of these moneymaker firms and stuff, like Citadel, like they all have them on their payroll. Like, they have Janet Yellen not on their payroll, but I'm figuratively speaking, they pay her speaking fees. They pay her, like, they've paid her hundreds of thousands of dollars in speaking fees in the past. So they have each other on like speed dial, right? They have like they're buddy, and they can call in favors anytime. And they did, and they're gonna continue to. And like they all got bailed out. They're all like, no, some firms got bankrupted like legitimately, but most of them got bailed out, or bailed out right before they got something like that. But they're gonna be okay. Like, they're not going down. I think maybe the smaller ones did, but the ones that have the connections, like it's like 2008 again. Like no one's going to be suffering here. Unless you try to gamble on GameStop and they locked you out of your account and you lost everything. Yeah, but don't try to make a quick buck. That's not a good idea.
Yeah, nobody's going to be losing their fourth yacht or their houses in the Hamptons over this one. Yeah, something really funny that I heard was that Ben Bernanke, I guess, sits on the board of Citadel.
Yeah. I mean,
Which,
you just literally like you Google these names and they're all getting lunch together. Like it's not a surprise, right?
yeah, yeah, I like your take on it. It is kind of funny to sit from an outside perspective, having known how broken everything is for a while and trying to explain it to people, and then just to have it happen so nakedly, and people to get all up in arms over it. And it's like, come on, guys, this has been happening for, my
No,
entire life.
exactly. Like my texting life has been like, oh my god, the economy is a meme. It was always a meme. Like it's just now it's just so fully apparent. I love it. It's so great. It just gets people, looking this stuff up and being like, oh, I didn't realize. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people will be learning what rehypothecation is this week. And I think that's a great and beautiful thing. I mean, it's and yeah, I say it on the podcast all the time, but one of the most beautiful things about Bitcoin is it's the only form of digital money. I mean, if you count altcoins, but the only form of digital money or asset that you can actually self custody and verify that you actually have ownership over it, and that's just beautiful. Like people don't realize that, like when their money's in the bank or they're transferring in money on Venmo or whatever, that
They hear online and they're like even more worried because like especially if you're older, but they don't. Yeah, there's a big mental leap for people.
yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's so hard for people to really get into Bitcoin off the bat, is because it challenges so many assumptions and brings people back to first principles, and people want to be um they want to feel like they're uh what's the word, like proficient, or um like they have a firm understanding, like they're capable, and they
Not that
don't.
they have a firm understanding of how the normal economy works. So
Mhm.
that's also the problem. People don't have an understanding of what money is anyways. But I'm hoping like the GameStop thing and like it will progress to a point where you're talking to an average person. They're like, oh, can you explain Bitcoin to me? You'll be like, it's real money that is yours. And they're like, whoa, money that's actually mine? Who help me? Like that's the mental leap people need to make. The norm should be my money can be taken from me at any time. And then on that baseline, you're like, guess what? You heard of Bitcoin? Can't be taken from you at any time. And they're like, whoa. So that's kind of my hope.
Yeah. So I saw you recently left Twitter. What prompted that decision?
Oh my God. Yeah. I've been on there for 10 years on that account. 10 years before my YouTube or anything. And my little slogan was I write state with a capital S because it has become our God. And I had that slogan when I was an atheist. So there's a lot of like premonitions for me on that account. Like it was a big evolution, a big journey. Loved Twitter. Yeah, I've been meaning to get off of social media because of, well, I think we see what's going on now with Biden. He's doing retroactive like prosecutions of people for posting memes. Uh,
Mm.
so if you saw like the um, what's his name? God, the MAGA guy. Um,
He's posting memes about Hillary Clinton that were apparently misleading or
he
something.
posted, oh God, what's his name? I can't believe it slipped my mind. He posted a joke. Uh, encouraging people to text their vote, which like, so that people think
that's
they voted when they didn't. But there was like a left-wing woman who did the same joke, except like, vote on the 9th, vote Trump on the 9th. And it was the day after the election. So it was like a joke to mislead people to vote wrong. It's a joke and he's getting sued over this. She's not, of course, because she was right. She was, joking with the right person. Um, so that's insane. It's insane. And I don't want to be in social media because I don't want to be prosecuted by a government that hates me because of a platform that hates me. And that sounds crazy, but they're literally doing this. They're doing it right now. So it's just going to get worse. We're heading into China territory with the social stuff. So I don't want to be online. I don't want to have my voice online open to interpretation of government agencies, etc. I don't need it. The cloud isn't worth it. Like, no one's paying me for my hot takes. I'm not supporting my family with my hot takes, and I'm done. It's actually scary. And I also, even if you raise all of those concerns, like, just don't do hot takes. Okay. Why are you on a platform that fucking hates you? So I'm done. Don't want to be on there. I have like a private Telegram group for some people that like I wanted to keep in touch with, and I'm pretty happy there.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, when they're talking about domestic terrorism laws, which would essentially be like Domestic Patriot Act on steroids, like it does seem reasonable. And that's the thing that people don't get is like, when you give power over to the state, it's not about like, will it be used now, but there's a very high likelihood that it will eventually be used in a way that is just like really devastating and awful.
Ricky Vaughn. It was Ricky Vaughn.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Ricky Vaughn. They're going after him.
Yeah, poor guy.
Yeah. So everybody, if anyone here reads Moldbug or follower Moldbug was wrong, and he needs to do a post admitting that he was wrong, because like Biden is not de-escalating anything. The fire is raging more than ever, and it is getting worse, and it is escalating. So he was wrong. His whole prediction was vote Biden because like the left won't have someone to hate and to fight against, and everything will simmer down. And give us time, but actually it's just like getting worse really, really fast. So he was wrong, unfortunately.
Yeah. And when it comes to stuff like that, what I like to point to people is that people would have better things to do than get out and get angry and go to war with their neighbors and burn their cities down if things were good economically. And yeah, it's not it, and we're not going to be able to fix that until we fix that issue. So, well, since you're fleeing social media, where are some good places people can follow you?
I guess I can give you a link to my Telegram to keep up for like 3 days under the podcast or video or however you throw it out there. And they can join my Telegram feed and chat. And then you can take that down after like 3 days or something. We could do that. So that's basically it. I'm off Instagram. I haven't been on Facebook in like years and years and years. So yeah, bravetheworld.com, contact. You can also buy the book directly there. You can get t-shirts and stuff. But yeah, www.bravetheworld.com. There's also a little mailing list there you can join. When I write a book, I send out a little blurb telling you I wrote a book. It's very rare. Also, anyone listening who wants an intro to Bitcoin, who like literally doesn't know what's going on and doesn't want to do hours of research and deciding like where to buy it, how does the wallet work, I do intro tutorials for like, price. So it's not free, but if you want to do that, you can contact me through my website as well, and we can talk about that.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. This is a really fun conversation.
Yeah, it was fun. Love to be back at some point. And yeah, also if anyone wants a cool conference to go to, check out Guns and Bitcoin. I'll be speaking, and that's a great conference for Bitcoin stuff, privacy stuff, and gun stuff. So that hits all the kind of liberty-minded check marks for me, at least.
That sounds like one I need to get over to. Is that going to be in Austin?
Yes, it is. So yeah,
Cool.
that's going to be in the summer.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
I think summer or spring. No, spring. I'm sorry. Gunsandbitcoin.com. So it's called Bear and Arms. So yeah, look, I don't remember the date off the top of my head. So check that out.
Awesome. Man, that was a really fun conversation with Julia. And I think what's really important for people to understand is that we need to be preparing for disaster before it happens instead of afterwards. And, the worst thing that you can have, in preparing for something that never comes, potentially never comes, is you just have peace of mind. Like, that you are safe in the event that something terrible happens. And I think at this point, it's looking very, very likely that there is going to be a horrible economic depression, that normal people are going to get hit really hard, and that our financial system is just a big joke. Like she called it a big meme. And that is what it is. Like, a group of Redditors were able to bring down our monetary system, and Wall Street, some of the most powerful people in it, to their knees by just pumping one stock. It's like, it's a joke, and so that's why Bitcoin is so incredibly important and is the ultimate insurance policy against the insane spending of the state, and monetary policy. Like, it's awesome. But yeah, big thank you to Julia for coming on. I mean, that was just awesome. I think, like, for some people, conversations like this could be terrifying, and for others, it's just a good time because they genuinely have assurance policies set in place. Like, I know, like, I can sleep at night knowing that financial destruction is on the horizon and is a very high possibility because I have Bitcoin, and it's why I'm trying to get out there and get this information out for people, because, so many people are just, they trust the powers that be to take care of them, and they won't, and they can't, and they have no desire to. And so, yeah. Well, that being said, get to your local Bitcoin meetup. February 16th up in Phoenix, we're going to be having one. Go to meetup.com, search for the Arizona Bitcoin Network. There's a great group up in Phoenix that meets online every Saturday at 2 o'clock. I've been going to that one and enjoy the guys over there a lot. And every last Saturday of the month, we're going to be having one in Tucson. And if interest picks up, I'd be happy to do one weekly. But yeah, shoot me an email at tucsonbitcoin@protonmail.com and let me know if you're interested.